Hello YouTube, Nathan Comarsh coming to you from my home in Orlando, Florida. Welcome to the Magic Studio. This is where I share with you some fun clips from my archives and talk about the creative process behind bringing these pieces from the notebook to the stage. And today I want to share with you something that no one has seen before except myself and the producers of Penn and Teller Fool Us, and that was the audition clip that I sent them in 2015 that led to my being featured on the season 3 premiere of Penn and Teller Fool Us. And I want to do it because I want to share with you, if you're seeing this, especially on YouTube, you've probably already seen that clip. And I think it's kind of cool to see how the piece started off. What you're about to see is the very first time it was performed in front of an audience compared to how it ended. And we're going to talk about the creative process, how this thing got from the notebook to the stage and the changes that happened as it went from the first part to what you saw on the TV screen. Because I'm a big believer that, you know, whatever it is you do in life, if it's creative, creativity really is solving problems. It's answering questions. And the clearer you are with the questions that you're answering and the clearer you are with the problems that you're addressing, the more likely you are to have really creative solutions. So we're gonna, as we're going through it, I'm gonna talk about some of the problems with this piece and how those problems got fixed here, and then what I would do if I were to do this piece again. It's no longer part of my stage repertoire for reasons that might seem apparent. So anyways, let's check out the clip.
And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nathan Comarsh.
That suit does not fit him. It absolutely doesn't fit him, but we'll let him continue.
So with this device, we have access to any information instantaneously, right? Any question I have, couple seconds, the answer appears. Imagine the next step. Imagine instant access to anything. You want something.
Man, this premise got so much better when I wrote and spent time, and not a lot of time, but a big part of the creative process bringing this on stage was writing a comedic monologue to open this that kind of acknowledged the weirdness of this show. It's a very unusual environment to perform in. And got the funny going right from the start. You'll notice it's a while till we get to the first laugh in this very first performance of this piece.
It just appears. We're going to do that for you tonight. We're going to do that for you tonight. You're going to think of something. I'm going to make it appear for you. There is a catch. Because of course there's a catch. Of course there's a catch. Whatever it is needs to fit inside this jar. So it could be like some seashells, a flower, Danny DeVito. If it fits inside this jar, we can get it to appear. So let's do this. Would you mind kind of checking that out for us and just kind of walk around inside, make sure there's nothing but fresh, clean, pure Florida air in there. And as he's doing that, what is your name, sir?
Steve.
Steve, do you mind joining me for a second? The people will love you. Give it up for Steve. Welcome, Steve. It's a pleasure. Good to see you.
There's a very different order in the way the action happens between this and what you saw in Fool Us, and there's a reason for that. There's a heck of a lot of what we call process in this trick. The cards have to be signed. All the signed cards have to be collected. The jar has to be shown. The jar has to be put in the boxes. The jar has to be put on display up there. It's a crazy long process. And so one of the inspirations for how I rewrote it and reconstructed it for Fool Us and the order those actions happen on Fool Us was from a phenomenal book which is called alternately Truffaut-Hitchcock or Hitchcock-Truffaut. The way they have the typography on the cover leaves it kind of ambiguous, which I think is pretty cool. And it's a transcription of a week's worth of long, morning till night conversations between the French director Francois Truffaut and Alfred Hitchcock. And one of the things Hitchcock talks about is sequences where there's a lot of procedure that you've got to get through, and how do you handle that, right? And he talks about a technique he calls meanwhile back at the ranch, which is that you get some of the action started going, and then when it gets to the pouring process stuff, you cut to parallel action. So if we're starting our road trip down here, right, we establish that the characters are starting their road trip, we see them leave and start to drive, and then we cut over to the beginning of a process over here, right? So as I was writing this piece for Fool Us, I was creating a 3-ring circus where I was placing the spotlight on different actions at different times. So I believe, if I'm going to remember the order and sequence of everything in Fool Us, first we hand the jar out, we get Allison, we explain the card thing, she goes and collects the cards, and once she's out collecting the cards, now they're done checking out the jar. Now we can display the jar, boom, put it up on the pole, and by the time it's up on the pole, Allison's back, and all that process stuff becomes completely invisible because we very deliberately put the focus on different spots. So just a kind of little cool thing there.
Just kind of chill out right here, my friend. So earlier, now we got a live audience here. Nobody here is in on it. Nobody's been set up with anything. But what we did is earlier, we had everyone secretly write down something that might fit inside that jar. And Steve, what I'm going to ask you to do, there's a box right behind you, and I'm not going to touch it, very important. If I touch that box, Steve, I want you to smack me in the mouth and storm off in disgust. Okay, brother? All right, so grab the box for us, and you're going to just kind of go around and collect from the people. They'll just, you can drop yours in as an example, and collect from the people.
So one of the big creative projects as far as the magic-y, secret-y stuff that happened on Fool Us was a way of doing this that did not involve this damn box. So you'll see there's some advantages to the box, but there's also some awkwardness, and when he has to open it, and it sort of looks suspicious, I think. And so using it on just an open plate where everything could see everything, where everyone rather could see everything, I think was a lot clearer. So that was a challenge, figuring out a way to do that. So here we go.
As he's doing that, we got, this is good and solid, Jason, as we come through. And I want you guys to notice we've got a solid empty glass. We're going to isolate this. Isolate it in the very center of a box, which itself is going to go...
Ooh, I hated that moment. So you saw for a second there, if you haven't seen this in my live show, or if you hadn't seen it on Penn and Teller Fool Us, we basically, and the way this has been shot, I have no idea why. I appreciate the producers having the vision, and maybe the magic consultants knowing how this worked, to trust us here that that box went completely out of view. So if this was the only thing you were going on, I very easily could have switched that box completely for another box. That is not what happens. I will mention something here. Well, here, we'll let this run a little bit further.
About 8 feet in the sky. So a glass jar inside a box, 15 feet in the air. So exciting. Actually, let me bring this a little bit closer for you guys.
Now here's a subtle point. There's something that's been really annoying me about the comments on the Fool Us clip that I thought I'd just clarify here, just because I'm a human being and whatever. But on the Fool Us clip, while Allison is coming back up, I grab a hand towel from off of the chair, I dab the sweat off my forehead, and then I throw the hand towel behind the table there. There's some people who saw that and were like, he's got the glass inside the hand towel, and it never occurred to me, and should have, that people would have interpreted that. You can see from this first performance, there's no hand towel, there's no throwing the thing over. That had absolutely nothing to do with it. There was sweat on my forehead that I was taking off, and the camera didn't catch me dabbing it. So by the time the camera comes back to me, I've got this thing in my hands, and it's like, where the hell did that come from? And I throw it deliberately behind the table, and there were some, it was funny. There were some very snarky comments of people being like, we can see you put it behind the table, and it's like, well, no crap. So here we go, let's continue.
As the tension builds. All right, and you've got those? Yes. Let me bring you the table here. So you're gonna rest rest the box on the table there. And if you would, there are 2 triangular flaps there. If you want to just pull up on both those triangular flaps and pull up on the blue tab there. There's a blue tab, there's another blue tab inside. Take that, just by the tab, you can just open it all the way, perfect. And
yeah, having the plate was so much better than this.
Reach inside, give it a shake, reach around. Give it a shake. In fact, and here's what we're going to do. Now, you're not in on it, they're not in on it, but to make sure it's completely random, I want you to grab a handful of those. And in a moment, you're going to delicately let them fall into the box, leaving just one in your fist. Go ahead and let those fall, let those fall, let those fall, let those fall. One. Now, you could have thought of anything. Could have gone with anything. It could have been any of those. Do you want to change your mind? Do you want to go for another one? You satisfied for the first time? Open up. Let's see what we got. Let's see what we have to. What does it say? Can you read that?
Golf ball.
Golf ball. Okay. All right. So we're gonna imagine a golf ball. You go ahead and drop that back in. Inside. Now it's a solid box mounted on top. Inside the box, as we open up another box, and inside that box,
Oh my gosh.
very slowly lift that up.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Show it to the people.
It's a golf
Oh,
ball.
give it a shake, give it a shake.
Two problems right here. One is that I just skipped ahead in the film. Two problems here, two problems right here, FC's reaching in. One is that the way this is blocked, and blocking is what we refer to as arranging and choreographing the physical actions, right? The camera can't see what he's looking at when he pulls that out. What he's looking at when he pulls that out is a completely empty box, completely filled with a jar that has a golf ball in it. So yeah, those are kinds of a lot of the little things that got improved as I did this. This was the first time doing it. Did it several hundred times between sending this video in. Even though I didn't know that I was going to be booked on the show, I wanted to be ready, and I really, really cared about this. I've been a huge fan of the show, huge fan of Penn and Teller for years, and wanted to be ready if I got my shot. So I found every situation in which I could perform this over and over and over and over again, and that's one of those little details that gets tighter.
Oh my gosh.
Show it to the people.
It's a golf ball.
Oh, give it a shake, give it a shake. And let's do this. Let's do this now. And you thought of something different. It could have been anything. Go ahead and uncap that. And you're just gonna drop it in my hand on the just kind of perfect.
Oh.
Nice.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So that's, confirmed for them. That's a solid golf ball. Feel inside. It's a real golf ball.
Yes,
A real solid glass jar. So that it had to have come into existence inside the jar in front of you. Wow. So really appreciate.
And that, my friends, was the audition clip for Penn and Teller Fool Us. Should we talk more about this? Well, let's talk more about this. What the heck? So where did this come from? In 2012, I was doing a performance for a corporate group, and it was an incentive trip. These were people from a call center and the theme of the group was that these were the superheroes of their company. And so they wanted a way to integrate this theme of them being superheroes of the company into the show. So what I developed for them was when everybody came into the room, and one of the other problems too is these were employees from call centers that were all over the United States. So they didn't know each other, and it was a small group, and they were going to be hanging out for a couple days. So we wanted a way for them to kind of bond together as a group. So when they came in and arrived at dinner, there was a little card in front of each place station and a pencil, and it said if I could have any superpower, it would be. And they got to decide the superpower they wanted. And then during the show, one of them got to live the superpower that they had always wanted. So that was something I developed in 2012. It was kind of like an inspirational source that floated in the background, and some of the secret stuff was very highly influenced by that. You'll hear the word Harbin's Ditch. Now, Harbin's in Penn's code. Harbin's Ditch isn't a term of art within magic, but it does refer to the brilliant South African magician Robert Harbin. And one of the things Harbin was great at, if you've ever seen the zigzag lady illusion, this is where a person, somewhat misogynistically at Harbin's time, it was a woman would go in and would be divided by 3 blades, and there was an audience member who was up on stage with her, checking out this box and sliding the center of this person's body away from the head and the feet. And what made this incredible, Harbin used boxes in magic in a way that was very different from the way boxes had been used in magic kind of before and since, which is that typically a magic box is used to conceal something tricky, and it invites even more suspicion. What Harbin did was he found ways to use boxes to isolate exactly where an impossible thing was happening. So you had no doubt, this is right here, this is happening right here. So, for instance, with the Zigzag Woman, you know exactly where her body is confined, that it's in this spot. And if you've seen the illusion done since Harbin, you probably haven't seen it done as well. Because because you've probably seen it done as a dance number, and there's music, and there are people moving, and they're spinning it around. What Harbin did was he invited someone up from the audience, typically a woman, because there's a woman in the box, who would feel the person in the box's hand, feel her face, feel her stomach as she laughed and breathed and giggled. And it sounds weird, but there is a clip of this on YouTube that you can look up, and I'll try to link to in the comments. And she then pulled the body away, the audience member did. So it was so much more convincing because she knew exactly what was going on. She knew that the body parts were real. It's an incredible piece of magic. Harbin had a trick that involved a selected playing card vanishing and appearing in an impossible place. And the core principle of that is something that I adapted and reblocked for this. The other big inspirational source, there is my brain is off. I'm feeling terrible. Harry Ing. Harry Ing was known within magic circles for creating these impossible objects, things that might sit on like a mantelpiece but be in their own construction absolutely impossible. So a deck of cards inside of a narrow bottle. You think of the ship in the bottle but taken to a impossible extreme. I always loved that idea, but I hated the idea of it being something that just sat on a shelf. I wanted to create a routine where that impossible object was created in front of the audience and then given as a gift at the end, so that now that impossible object isn't just something that somebody has on their shelf, but when people look at it and check it out and see that it's impossible, there's a story behind it. So that was the big, and for the record, the thing in the trick that was intended to potentially fool them was the nature of the construction of the impossible bottle. There's some reasons, and I don't know how much I want to get into, but there's some reasons that I didn't push that on stage at the time in the TV show. And it's fine. This has been an incredible clip for me. And I'm really grateful for Penn and Teller because what they've done is they've created a showcase for live magic on TV that shows the best in the world. In a way that they care about, you see these other kind of magic competition shows or variety artist competition shows, and a lot of times, they get eyeballs by making people look bad, sometimes in very disingenuous ways. And it's awesome that there's a show that is just about, hey, here's this really cool thing, enjoy it, and we're going to judge it on this very objective criteria. And the really great thing about that, right, is we live in a time where magic on TV has gone through different seasons. So at the very beginning, nobody trusted it because they'd seen Georges Méliès, just make somebody appear, and they knew it was because he was running the camera in an empty room, and then he turned the camera off and then put a person in there and turned the camera back on, and they appeared, right? And so it took through the 1950s performers like Mark Wilson who made magic on TV credible again because they got the audience to buy into the fact that no camera tricks were used, no directing tricks were used, no editing tricks, and they made it buy into that by not doing any camera or editing or directing tricks, and by making everything one continuous shot that people could enjoy. Then, in the 90s and early 2000s, there have been some very innovative things done with TV, but among those innovations, some performers have gotten looser and looser with the kind of cheats that they're willing to do in magic on TV. And you get things that are very transparently done with stooges or editing tricks or just, and it means nothing because people are used to watching these amazing special effects in Star Wars or Avatar or whatever. So who cares about another special effect that is a card trick unless it's something that's created through the human ingenuity of having to be done in real time, right here, right now, for another human being breathing the same air, and the camera just happens to be watching that. If you know that, then it's really cool. So what I think is so great about Penn and Teller Fool Us is that the whole premise, because you have two people who have their reputation on their lines, who are incredibly knowledgeable, who are trying to bust the person who's performing right there in the moment, right then, it's real. It's not a damn camera trick. And I think that's really important. It's really awesome. And it's been really cool to be able to showcase my work with them. So I hope you enjoyed this little peek behind the scenes at the audition clip. And feel free to ask me any questions in the comments. And I hope there is love where you are and things are incredible. And I will see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Whoop. There we go. Oh.